Hey guys, I'll be talking a bit about LaTeX. Some people call this LaTeX, other people call this LaTeX. If you're with a bunch of nerds, you can say LaTeX and they'll probably correct you. Note that you can't even type in LaTeX without the thing complaining. Note that I'm using Overleaf as my editor. I've used this for 2 math classes. It's pretty reliable, it's very convenient, it's online. You don't need to do any local setup, and it is decently fast and comes with some autocomplete, but not all of it. So sometimes you have to manually type stuff in. You'll note that this document is completely blank, but yet we start on line 167. And why is that? Well, there's this whole thing above it. It's called the preamble. It's got import statements. It's got a bunch of configuration options. I did not write this, my professor did. Here's some packages that you can import. Here's some macros that I defined. Here's a lot more macros. They're just commands, abbreviations for things that I'll be talking about. Here's some more commands. Here's some more. It's just a lot of commands. And then some more configuration stuff. This is another command, and it's just a header. It's what's up here. So, first of all, note that you can divide a document into sections to make your thing look pretty professional. You can do section, subsection, and even sub-subsection. I wonder how far this goes. Anyways, you'll note that the numbers number themselves. And I typically don't use this because in homework problems, you just kind of write math under the problem, and that's about it. So how do you actually write math? Well, if you want to write text, you can just do it normally. And hit save, and it'll show up there. Looks pretty nice. If you want to write math, you got to enter math mode, and you can do that easily with dollar signs. So we can type stuff like x squared equals 4, and that shows up there. Cool. So what are some basic things that you need to know? Well, there's number sets, which include the naturals, the rationals. You would type this with math BB and whatever symbol you want. So rationals, reals, rationals, integers, naturals. If you want to do positive integers, you can do that. Or if you think that 0 is a natural number, you can do this to denote the positive naturals. Here you can see all the symbols. I have a duplicate here. Note that exponents are just the same as normal exponents. You just put a caret symbol. And for the common ones, I've abbreviated them with macros as above, like \n for naturals or \z for integers. I'll link the preamble in the description of this video as well. So, what else can you do? You can write equations, obviously. So we got the equal sign, we got the not equal sign, we have the less than, greater than, those are less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. And then we have less than and greater than. Here are the symbols. There's also propositional logic, which you can do with V or wedge, which is actually equivalent to logic or and logic and. I find the last two to be slightly more intuitive. It actually is the same symbol. Actually, it might not be. The spacing looks a bit different. Oh, or is it because... Yeah, I have no idea, but I usually use lore and land. There might be some Math Overflow post on why the spacing's a bit different, but lore and land sound a bit more intuitive than saying A V B or A wedge B, in my opinion. You can also do set operations. The standard ones are cup and cap for a union and intersection, but I just abbreviated that as set or and set and in my macros. This one's a custom one. Oh, it looks like the spacing just kind of happens Like if you put brackets around here, I think it should fix the spacing. Yeah, there we go. So it's not a problem with the commands themselves. So Lore and Land basically function equivalently to V and Wedge. These might take some time to remember, maybe like 5 minutes, but if you use it for a while, you can get used to it. There's also quantifiers if you're taking any discrete math class or whatever. There's for all, exists, unique is just, you just put an exclamation mark. There's also the set in operator. There's the not in operator, which is just not in. And if you're doing things like number theory, you can use the mid to say like 2 divides 4, and like in mid to show that 2 does not divide 5, assuming we're talking about reals or integers. Actually, divides only is valid for integers, so there's that. You can also use the bar here, but it looks a bit weird. There's like no spacing going on. So you can maybe manually space it out. Okay, that's too much space. Yeah, so just use the mid command. It's not as mid as you think it is. For fractions, you probably noticed, it's pretty intuitive, it's just \frac. You can see Overleaf auto-completing that for me. And that's a very small fraction. If you want to make it into display mode, you can put double $signs. This also centers it. Now we have a slightly bigger fraction. Pretty cool. For vectors, you do /vec, and then you put the vector symbol in brackets. But it turns out that because you're only doing a single letter, you can just remove the brackets entirely. And I actually ended up abbreviating vec as v, so I just do /va to get the same thing. You know, when you're typing out like 50 different vectors in a homework document, sometimes these abbreviations save a lot of time. For matrices, if you want to do it the long way, you do begin p matrix. There are other types of matrices. This one's just parentheses around the matrix. So for a row, you separate the entries with ampersands, and then for multiple rows, you just put a new line between every row. Speaking of which, I don't think I've talked about new lines at all. So if you want to do a new line, you can just put an empty line between 2 lines of content, or if you're lazy, you can just do \\, and it'll also make a new line. The spacing is actually slightly different, but no one's gonna mind. You can also put more \s to make it wider, or taller, I guess. For exponents, we already talked about that. They're the same. And for subscripts, like let's say you want to subscript a vector or something, you just write an underscore. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And that's pretty much all of the math stuff that you're going to need for a first-year math class. There are some, if you're doing like a set of equations, or you're doing a bunch of implications or equation derivations or whatever, you might need things like implies or a by implication, which is an if and only if. And in rare cases where you want the arrow to go the other way, you can use long left arrow. I personally have never used this, but just for symmetry, we have all 3 arrows. If you want to do something like a equation simplification thing, or some kind of derivation where you have multiple equations, you can use the begin align environment. Note that this is maybe the 3rd time we've seen the begin command. There's like begin document. We got begin matrix. Here's the begin align. Oh yeah, my macro for matrices is just \m, and then you put the same exact thing inside the brackets. And that also saves a lot of time, surprisingly. It ends up being the exact same thing. For a line, let's say you have the equation x² = 4. Want to solve that. So this implies that x is ±2. Cool. Got this. This is, would this be a valid by implication? Yes, it would. So we can actually replace this with if and only if. Note that this is not a line. So how do you align stuff? Well, LaTeX uses something called RL alignment when it comes to this. You put ampersands, and magically, if you put them in the right place, it works. Now for RL formatting, it's actually a bit confusing if you've never been taught this. Like I had no knowledge of this for like half of my first semester. And then I randomly found this Stack Overflow post that kind of explained it, which was nice. So every time you put an ampersand, you're basically creating a column divider. So if you have 2 ampersands, you have 3 columns. And the way the alignment works is that the first column is right aligned, the second column is left aligned, and the third column is right aligned. So over here, if you put 1 ampersand, then everything to the left of that is right aligned, as you can see here, and everything to the right of that is left. Note that this if and only if is kind of overlapping with the X squared here, so if you want to move that over, you have to put ampersands here, but you actually have to put 2 to preserve the existing RL alignment here. So what we have done here is that first column, if and only if, that's right aligned. Second invisible column is left aligned. Third column is the left-hand side of this equation, which is right aligned, which we want. And then the fourth column is left aligned. And now that we have this massive space here, I have no idea how to get rid of it. But one way is to just change align to align at. And then also give a number argument as your second parameter. Turns out you can basically put anything in here. Most of the time it still works. So, which is pretty interesting. But you can't put nothing, or else Overleaf will complain. To be honest, it still works, so as long as it works, it's fine. It's kind of funny. Oh, right. You might notice that we have a star here. I kind of did that by muscle memory because if you don't put the star, it'll number every single line of your equation thing. So here, if I remove the star, got 1 and 2. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. And this goes for not just align and align at, but also things like begin equation. We got 2 variants, equation and equation star. The only difference is that equation numbers the thing while star removes the number. Some other environments are begin enumerate. This one enumerates things. You can put items, and then by default it'll use numerical numbering, but you can change that. I abbreviate item as \I because I also want to save some typing time. Macros are honestly so underrated. It might make your code look really bad, but as long as you get the correct output, like the PDF output, and it's readable, then that's fine. And if you want to do like a set of equations, like let's say you're solving a system of equations, you can use begin cases and then just write your equations here. X plus y is 4, x minus y is 2. Boom, we got those curly braces. Oh, and you have to wrap this one in $signs because begin cases doesn't enter math mode for you. It's kind of weird. Some of these, like enumerate and align at, you don't need $signs around it, but something like cases, you do need $signs. So just keep that in mind. Also, you don't have to remember it because if you get it wrong, Overleaf will, or any other LaTeX compiler will probably complain and force you to fix it. If you want to put text inside something that's in math mode, like let's say this, one way to do it would be to add a tag here, which actually doesn't work. It actually doesn't work here. You can put it in like align, in an align environment instead. So here, get some nice parentheses going. Note that the number is actually gone. That's pretty interesting. Maybe that's the whole point of tag. It's to tag your equation. But usually I use it to write comments. Like let's say we can say in this case, you square root both sides. If you do want to put text though, a surefire way of doing that is to just write text. And that should work. Might not look that great, but then you can also space it out with something like quad. Or maybe if you're feeling lazy, you just put some spaces to the left. And I think that should work. Nope, it does not work. I have lied. It actually condenses into one space. You gotta love LaTeX, right? If you want to center stuff, you can put double dollar signs and do it. And I know some of you probably think that this is bad practice, but it's very fast. I mean, the other way is you could begin equation star and do it, but who wants to type all of this out when you can just do double dollar signs? And sometimes you might end up with a really long formula that wraps around the page. Yeah. Maybe I'll make a contrived example right now. Just have this and then some extremely long formula. Let's delete some of these. So we end up with something that wraps around like this. If you don't want it to wrap around, you could always just manually put some new lines, or you can wrap this in brackets to tell LaTeX that you want this as a single block, and then put some new lines because it'll just stretch off the page. So yeah, you might have to do that. If you want stuff in italics for some apparent reason, you could use emph. It's like you're emphasizing the text. And if you want to bold something, I use Command B, but it's like the actual command is text BF, and you get bold text. It's interesting that these commands, like the backslash ones, most of them don't require you to be inside math mode, like text BF, or I suppose text even. You could just straight up write it here and it works. But who would need backslash text when you're outside math mode, because you could just type it in normally. And if you want to put new pages, just do backslash new page or backslash clear page. I'm sure there's a difference between the two, or maybe there's not, who knows. Now we have one more page. If you do like multiple commands, it actually if you do 2 new pages, yeah, we still end up with only 1 new page. That's interesting. And that's pretty much all I know about LaTeX. If you want to do products, you can use prod. If you use summations, you use sum. If you forget some symbol but you know how it looks, you can go here and draw it. This is the Texify. They also have a Mac app, which is pretty cool. Look, there's smiley faces. You could like. Some of these you need libraries to actually use them. In this case, I think, yeah, Overleaf doesn't know what smiley is, but okay. Pi should definitely work, right? Yeah, and then you can also do uppercase pi. Now you know the basics of LaTeX. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.